How many people believe Jesus is God?
ne bangahe bakwikiriza ngu yesu niwe
How many
ruhanga
people believe Jesus is the holy God of
ne
Israel?
bangahe barikwikiriza ngu yesu niwe
That
ruhanga wa
Jesus came to
Isirayeli
earth as God.
ngu yesu akije mu nsi nka ruhanga
Now why
abwenshi
did God have to come to earth?
abwenshi ruhanga yaraine kwije mu nsi
He's God.
akuba ni ruhanga
He could have done all that he needed to do in heaven.
akabire nakore ekindi ekintu kyona
Why did he have to come?
ahabwenshi
To earth.
yijire omunsi
It's because he's a God of love.
nabwo kugira ngu ni ruhanga
Greetings, one and all. Super Sundays here in the Holy Land, the Holy City, Elon Moreshchem, a couple of minutes away from my yeshiva. We are on the 8th day of the month of Tammuz 5784. With Hashem's help, God's help, we have a very, very critical series coming up. And because it's so critical, I will do my best to keep each class at 30 minutes. I don't want to put too much material in one class, so therefore I'm going to do my utmost to keep these classes at a half hour. This series probably will be a 4 or 5 part series. It will be called a different name, but just between us, you know that even though it's a different name, it's part 1, part 2, part 3, etc. Our subject is a critical one. Is Christianity idol worshiping? Before we go into our journey, I don't think that this subject has been taken on. Maybe it was touched on, but for 4 or 5 classes in detail to explain it from A to Z, I thank Hashem for this opportunity of being part of a pioneer program. Okay, once again, these classes are for the sake of heaven, to remove the divine presence from the exile, to improve ourselves. Even a small step, which today is a big step forward. Thank you to our sponsors, Mike in the north of Israel, south of Israel, saving a lot of people with his assistance. His amazing sacrifice is a lesson for all. And to the greatest blog, Tomer Devora, check it out. Tomer Devora, who puts up these classes every week. Okay, so let's take it away. For 2,000 years, the Jewish people stood in fear, trembled, fearing the wrath of the Christian church. Jewish ideas, principles, books had to be self-censored in order to be allowed to be publicized and published, dispensed amongst the Jewish world. Any words, hints that could be construed as offensive to the Christian world were immediately removed or changed. Jewish communities worldwide faced a fear of harsh retribution of wrath of the Christians if any criticism of their religion would be found or could be construed. What were our rabbis thinking really when they explained to us how in our days, we will see, this is something hundreds of years it's going on, more than that. But in our times, this could be 1,000 years ago. In our times, the Gentiles are different. We're not talking about those primitive people that used to worship idols. We're talking about a totally different brand of Christians. What were they really thinking? Was this a way to elude the Christian church? Or did they really mean it? Not a simple question. The past 70 years, dear friends, have given us somewhat. There's still many limitations. There's still fear. I myself, on Mike's channel, we are limited to getting out the message, getting out these classes. That's why we're always asking the public to do it. We are limited. Our channel is limited by YouTube. But to some degree, in the last 70 years, for the first time in history, are we able to somewhat have a conversation, a discussion on the true status of various religions? And the next couple of weeks, we will be taking a look at Christianity. Okay. First of all, when we're talking about Christianity, of course, we can't put everybody in the same plate. There are many groups. For example, according to a Pew statistics some years ago, Catholics make up 50.1% of the Christians, Protestants 36.7%, Eastern Orthodox 9.4%, Oriental Orthodox 2.5%, others 1.3%. Some of these groups, more laws pertain, some of the groups less. We're not putting everybody in the same category, but the fundamentals, the principles of Christianity. Maimonides writes in the Laws of Kings, chapter 8, Law 10. Moses was commanded by God to convince or obligate the entire world to accept the 7 commandments of Noah. The most important one of them, of course, is idol worshiping. Now, I'm going to use a better terminology because we all have these images in our mind. When we think of idol worshiping, we think of men running around in skirts like Fred Flintstone in the Stone Ages, and his wife Elma, so we'll call it foreign worship. avodah zarah. Those that refuse, this is Maimonides, those that refuse to abide by the 7 commandments of Noah would be put to death. Those, on the other hand, those that observe the 7 commandments of Noah, because of the fact that God commanded these 7 laws in the Torah, and because God commanded them in the Torah, that is why I perform them. Those are religious Gentiles. Those are Gentiles that have a share in the world to come. Which means, amazingly, if you have a Gentile who does observe the 7 commandments of Noah, but he's doing it because his logic and his mind understanding tells him that this is correct, he is not a righteous person of the world. He is not insured a share in the world to come. It has to be what we just said. Commanded through the Torah by Moses to the world. That's why we're doing it. We see clearly from the words of Maimonides that when the Jews are strong and independent and not intimidated by the nations of the world, they must campaign for the 7 commandments of Noah. If this is not possible, might be danger, might not be possible. They must try to convince the nations of this obligation. So, please, I beg of you, on the question of convincing the nations of the 7 commandments of Noah, what does that mean? In real terms, real time, what does that mean for us? You have to listen to the last class that we discuss such a program. Is it a priority for us in our times to try to convince the nations to observe the 7 commandments of Noah? So remember, you must. An amazing answer by Rabbi Moshe Sternbach of the Eidah Haredit, the religious community of Jerusalem. He has many books on Jewish law. He has an amazing 5-page answer to this question. So make sure you tune in to all these classes, but for that question, if you're interested in it, the last class. However, leaving that aside, that Gentiles must observe the 7 commandments of Noah. If not, in the times where the Jewish people were able, those Gentiles would be put to death because they are destroying the world. They are endangering the entire world. You put to death one person in order to save entire communities. That's merciful, not cruel. So, this is a very crucial question. Is Christianity foreign worshiping or not? Because if it is, they're not observing the 7 commandments of Noah. And if the Jews had the power, these types of people would be put to death. They do not have a share in the world to come. They are not righteous Gentiles. They are wicked Gentiles. Very important question for their future and for our future. But much more urgent than that question of the 7 commandments for the nations. Much, much more urgent is this the following issue. Today, instead of pushing the 7 commandments of Noah to the nations of the world, we are busy. We don't have time for that. We're busy. What are we busy at? For the last 5 decades, Jews and Jewish organizations have been pushing, have been uniting themselves, aligning themselves with Christian organizations, with Christian individuals, forming a bond. Groups like ICUF or Friends of Israel, Lovers of Zion, Christians for Israel, and the beat goes on and on and on. Hundreds of these organizations, like mushrooms after a rainfall. They're sprouting all the time. Folks, this bonding for the last 5 decades, this bonding of Christians and Jews, Christian organizations and Jewish organizations, does this fulfill biblical prophecies of the end of days? Is this a fulfillment of end of day prophecies? Or have we gone to bed? Have we gone to bed with foreign worshipers? Have we corrupted? Have we corrupted generations of Jewish souls by breaking down barriers between us and the Gentiles, between us and the Christian world? And have we created an assimilation between Jews and Gentiles, not only in deed, but also in thought? Has Torah ideology been assimilated, corrupted, contaminated? Have we accepted, over the last 5 decades, billions of dollars of assistance from these Christian organizations, from righteous Gentiles or from foreign worshipers, with an agenda to bring the Jewish people back to the land of Israel, based on a verse in what they call the New Testament, to bring the Jews back to the land of Israel. And then when the time is right, when the coming, in order to bring the second coming, quote unquote, of the quote unquote Messiah, JC, then will all Jews at that time in history, will all Jews accept JC as the Messiah, as God? God forbid. to understand a little bit more about this censorship. The great Meiri, Rabbi Menachem ben Shlomo, he lived from 1249 to 1316 in France and then Spain. He authored the famous commentary on the Talmud, Beit HaBechira. In the following places, he wrote the same message. Bava Kama, Tractate 113a. Bava Kama 113b. Bava Metzia, page 2, side A. Tractate Avodah Zarah, page 20a. Avodah Zarah 26a. He reinstated the following. All the laws regarding Gentiles in the Talmud was speaking about a time when the nations were not practicing their specific law and order religions. This was before organized religion. They like to call it today organized religion. Rather, people were worshiping all types of idols. Today, however, the non-Jew believes in God, the creator of heaven and earth, and are men that are civilized through their religious culture. Or, when we talk about censorship, or was this for real? Did the Meiri really believe that? We have the Ber HaGolah, a Jewish law commentator. He writes in Choshen Mishpat, chapter 425. The Ber HaGolah, his name was Rabbi Moshe Raukash. He lived from 1591 to 1671 in Poland. Listen to what he writes. Listen to his words. The laws of Gentiles we are talking about lived in past history where the people worshipped all types of idols and galaxies in the heavens. However, the Gentiles that are living amongst us believe in the creation of the world, and their worshiping is done with God, the creator of heavens and earth, in mind. Not only are we obligated to save them, we're also obligated to pray for them, for their well-being. As Maimonides wrote, the righteous of the world have a share in the world to come. Now, of course, Maimonides never wrote that. Maimonides wrote, as we said 5 minutes ago, that a person that accepts upon himself that Moses received from God on Mount Sinai, to tell the nations of the world to observe the 7 commandments of Noah, and they accept upon themselves that this is a commandment from God to Moses through the Torah, those are righteous Gentiles. Those are people that have a share in the world to come. The Meiri, the Ber HaGolah, and others, were they sincere? Did they really differentiate between Gentiles of their day, 1249 to 1316, the Meiri, 1591 to 1671, the Ber HaGolah? Or was it a way to have their work and words published, eluding the censor? So folks, forget about the contradictions. We could stand here for the next half hour and bring statements of the Meiri himself which contradict what I just read. Contradictory to what he just said. Forget those. Okay? Just forget those. Forget the words of the Khatam Sofer. He writes in his questions and answers, chapter 90. He writes, forget the words, ignore and erase the words of the Meiri, who were said to protect himself and appease the censor. Forget the Khatam Sofer, who is saying straight out, the Meiri's words, erase them. Do not pay attention to them. He only said them because he was afraid of the censorship. Forget all that. Forget the contradictions. Forget the Khatam Sofer and many, many others who claimed that the words of the Meiri were said not out of belief, not out of truth, out of fear of the censorship. Out of fear, understandably, for the Jewish communities who might be eliminated because of the words of the Meiri or the Be'er HaGolah. Out of fear for the lives of Jews, out of love of Jews. They came out with these statements. What do they call them? Denials. But think about this. During the time of the Be'er HaGolah, when he wrote these words, he was alive, as we said, 1591 to 1671. When he talks about the new Gentiles, folks, he was alive and kicking, the Be'er HaGolah, in the years 1648 to 1649. When Bogdan Khmelnytsky, may his name be erased, killed 300,000 Jews in Poland. Are these the new Gentiles we're talking about, who have started a new leaf, who are civilized? OMG. Oh my gosh. Or think about the new enlightened, civilized Gentiles of Germany, of Poland, of Russia, or Ukraine that murdered, that gassed 6 million Jews. Is this what the Meiri and the Be'er HaGolah were talking about when they claimed that there was a new Gentile with new laws pertaining to them, unlike the laws of the Talmud and the Code of Jewish Law? Or think about the new civilized Muslim Nazis who perpetrated a pogrom against the Jewish people on October 7th, Simchas Torah, and they opened mothers' stomachs and they put babies into ovens, decapitated people. Was this the new Gentile that the Meiri and the Be'er HaGolah were talking about? When these Islam Nazis, they claim and continue to claim that October 7th will happen over and over again till they eliminate every Jew in the land of Israel. There's a book, it's written 10 years ago. It's called the book Toldot Noach is the name. This book, Toldot Noach, with the laws of the non-Jews, the 7 commandments. I spoke to the rabbi who wrote the book, because at the front page of the book, there is this paragraph of the Meiri, who we read, that claims that today, the Meiri lived 1,000 years ago, almost, that the Gentiles of his day were different. And he brings down this Be'er Gola that today, 500 years ago, the Gentiles are different. I asked the rabbi, listen, do you really believe in what you wrote, bringing down these two sources? Or were you afraid that maybe somebody would take you to court? And he told me, in order to protect myself, I brought these two sources. Listen to these words. 10 years ago, he wrote a book, and it's right there. People are pumping up. People are continuously putting it out. The words of the Meiri and the words of the Be'er HaGolah. Okay. To finish, receiving billions of dollars from Christian organizations, Christian individuals. The Talmud in the Tractate of Erchin, page 6, side A, states we do not accept donations from Gentiles for the building of the temple, not at the beginning, and we also do not in the middle, not in the beginning, and we do not accept specific items. Somebody donates a chandelier, that's a specific item. Someone donates a table, specific items we don't accept either. Only at the end of the building of the temple are donations accepted from Gentiles. Rashi explains two reasons for this law. Why don't we accept? Aren't we into the house will become, the house of the Lord will become a one place for all to worship? Isn't that the goal? The end game goal? Rashi brings down two reasons why we don't accept. Not at the beginning, not in the middle. And we don't accept specific items. Number one, this is a disgrace to the Jewish people. Why didn't they bring these items? Why aren't the Jewish people waking themselves up in order to contribute and donate to the temple or to the tabernacle? Second reason Rashi brings is the Gentiles will boast, we are the ones that built the temple. This is also a desecration of God's name. Folks, if you walk around the land of Israel, if you step into settlements, there's almost no settlements. You look and there's a plaque in hundreds of settlements in Judea and Samaria and other places with Christian organizations they donated this building, this wing, these instruments. And Rashi cries out, this is why we do not accept. This is a disgrace for the Jewish people for not donating. And this also will cause the Gentiles to boast that they're the ones responsible for the building of the temple, a desecration of God's name. In Tractate Sanhedrin 26b, those that accept money from non-Jews, we're talking about poor people here, in need, are likened to ones that eat pig and are not accepted as witnesses in a Jewish court. This is talking about poor people that agree to accept money publicly, not in private, publicly. This is put on social media. This is filmed. This is dispensed all over the world. We're not talking about somebody in a corner somewhere, unfilmed. Rashi brings down, this is a desecration of God's name. This is also brought down in the Code of Jewish Law, Choshen Mishpat 34:18. Last but not least, in the Tractate of Bava Batra, page 10, side B, it says, when the stalks are withered, they will be broken. Isaiah, a verse in Isaiah 27:11. What does that mean? When the stalks are withered, they will be broken. When the Gentiles run out of merit, the exile will end and the redemption will come. Folks, do we understand? We're shooting ourselves in the leg. By accepting donations of these Gentiles, we are giving them merit. And this is keeping the exile going. Because when the stalks do not have any nourishment, they do not have any water, any nourishment to grow, they will die. They will be filtered out. So that is why we do not accept charity from the nations. Remember, folks, all the above cases which are forbidden to accept money are not connected to today's phenomena of Gentiles and organizations donating buildings and centers and country clubs and organizations pushing their agenda to bring the Jewish people back to the land of Israel, to have the Jews settle the land of Israel, in order to bring the second coming of JC, in order to have the Jewish people accept JC as the Messiah and God. Till next week, God willing.